Welcome to Swarm Dynamics, miners. This is a general episode on the border topic of glyphid swarming and aggression behaviors that impact you and your coworkers down there in the mines. Today we'll be covering what we in the Mission Control Department refer to as swarm overlap. That and a few adjacent topics that delve into glyphid xenobiology, as well as some helpful tips to hopefully get you back home more often than not. This was originally going to be part of a mining mission video, but I felt this was important enough to have its own video. So let's get right into the important bits before I lose your attention spans to the bar about 20 meters away, huh? Swarm overlap. The name should be pretty self-explanatory, but for the sake of definitions, this is the phenomenon of multiple converging swarms made up of primarily glyphids, as well as some other local wildlife, entering the same cavern with the intent to eviscerate a certain mining team. What makes this different from the usual mortal danger we deal with on a regular basis is that you're dealing with what should have been two separate instances of bugs. I'm going to be covering this phenomenon in greater detail later in this series of videos, but I wanted to get a PSA out now to help some of you prevent scenarios where you're completely caught off guard by massive influxes of bugs that could have easily been prevented. Alright, so let's start off with probably the most common form of this, having to do with the end of any mission involving a mule. Or any big red button in general. It's the tail end of a mission, you're nearly done, and it's been a few minutes since your last swarm. You're calling your last supply pod to top off before you leave and oh no, it's a swarm. What do you do? Some miners might opt to press the button now to skip the swarm that just arrived. It's grown into a sort of mess hall rumor that calling the pod mid-swarm doesn't increase the threat and instead saves you some time and ammo. I can say categorically that this is not true. Once a swarm is detected and on its way, those bugs are going to hit you no matter what you do. They aren't going to turn around just because you pressed a big red panic button. What happens next tends to, ironically, reinforce this belief because the ensuing crowd of bugs is worse than it would have been if you hadn't called the rest of the brood to join the party in the first place. The miner who pressed it will double down, claiming that it would have been just as bad had he not done something about it, citing that you barely made it out or worse. So his preemptive escape attempt was justified. It's a frustrating closed loop, and a habit that can lead to losses at the tail end of a mission, angering teammates and causing the mistaken miner to believe he needs to rush even more to avoid an inexplicably awful swarm at the end of missions. You can see how this could happen, right? So what's actually going on at the end of a mission is two separate swarms of different types. You have your typical announced swarm that consists of multiple waves of bugs ranging in number in a localized area. Then you have an escape sequence swarm. These are attracted to escaping teams due to the disturbance that the subsurface scans required to aim the drop pod cause in the cave system. These are comparatively smaller waves of bugs that will spawn around dwarves in an attempt to cut them off as they run to the drop pod. These also never stop for as long as the pod is on its way, and especially after the boom it causes when it lands. The biggest difference between these two is one is more intense but can be fought off, while the other is less intense but will bleed your ammo and resources forever. Combine these two and you have a huge problem. Normal swarms have gaps in the wave since the bugs don't arrive all in one large group, so you have time to clear some before the next arrives if things are going well. Escape swarms will fill those gaps and bolster bug numbers so you never get a chance to breathe. If you're already low on supplies and getting desperate, the last thing you want is a swarm that's even more difficult than normal while you're trying to move quickly against the tide. There's no digging in and clearing the attackers in this situation. If you don't move, you're doomed either way, so it turns a standard exfiltration into a frantic dash. Why go through the headache? This is why my policy is always slow but steady. I understand not every combat mining faction will agree with my philosophy here, but I'm obligated to at least try to encourage you guys to avoid failing missions. If you're more skilled than that, you can safely, or perhaps not so safely, ignore my advice. Clear your swarms. This should be simple standard operating procedure here, guys. I shouldn't need to tell you this. It's on the same level as weapon maintenance, checking drop pod fuel cells, rebooting navigational software, and checking blood alcohol levels are within acceptable operating parameters. In my experience, splitting the team, ignoring bugs, and rushing through things is only acceptable in especially bad situations. I get it, sometimes a mission is going badly and abandoning the usual plan is necessary to try and salvage things. I've been there too. But 9 times out of 10, you're going to be much better off staying together, covering each other, and fighting off the swarm as a team. You might be nervous that you won't make it out and you want to hit that escape button now, but please take a moment to breathe and trust yourself and your team to get through it. Some miners are not as adept at moving quickly through hordes of bugs and will be much better at helping you get rid of them rather than being left in the dark as an entire hive bears down on you. The only reason you're going to want to press that button as a swarm appears is if you're out of options. You have no nitra or no ammo. You only have one player up and your team is down and split. This goes doubly if you still haven't cleared another group of bugs, and it's untenable for a single miner to clear them and get everyone else up. Calling it early might save the mission in these scenarios, but putting your whole team under more duress with a swarm overlap isn't going to increase your odds. Sure, you might make it out alone, but people aren't going to be happy if you routinely leave them behind as if you're on a solo operation. They are your teammates, not glorified lure grenades. Take your time, clear those bugs, and save yourself some frustration instead of a few seconds. By the way, this goes for any situation where an objective will call swarms to your location for its duration, and your team is either tied up by a previous swarm or low on resources and generally just not ready. Ambient waves, unannounced mini-swarms, side objective swarms called by rock crackers, hacking pods, or core stone events, all of these can overlap with normal swarms and each other, so you need to be ready to segment these out in order to avoid things getting worse. Asking your team before starting things is paramount, even if you just want to ping the thing and draw their attention to it. This goes especially for hacking pods, since the swarms they call will never stop if you can't finish the objective, so if you overlap these, you might never see the end of it, unless you count a failed mission. Pay attention to your team and pull through together, and I promise you that the missions won't go as badly as they will with the rushed and panicked desperation that some miners treat swarms with. Fight together or die alone, as we always say. Now, I could keep going, but instead I'm going to be covering more specific scenarios in later videos, each one focusing on different mission types and swarm dynamics that influence how teams should carry them out successfully. I'll also try to include some biological and behavioral explanations for why these swarms happen in various situations. Keep an eye out, we have a lot to cover. And as always, rock and stone. Big thanks as always to my Patreon supporters, Averta Tala, Agent Maxwell, Kyoto Sasukyo, Flagoblast, Inforay, KyleWee21, Raging Ripto, Sergeant Rattlebones, Team Stuck Dragon, Gabriel PBC, The Flannel Man, Theodore Argesh, and Von Boomslang. You guys keep this underpaid corporate liaison chugging along.
Well, Siirvend, I made it, despite your directions.
Ah, Supervisor Iron Fist, welcome! I hope you're prepared for an unforgettable mission. Oh my gods! My brew is ruined! But what if I were to purchase Abyss Bar drinks and disguise it as my own brewing? Oh, delightfully devilish, Siirvend. Siirvend, with his crazy explanations, the supervisor's gonna need his medication. When he hears Siirvend's lame exaggerations, there'll be trouble on the rig tonight. Supervisor, I was just, stretching my calves on the airlock hatch. Isometric exercise. Care to join me?
Why is there fluid leaking out from under that barrel, Siirvend?
Oh, that isn't leak. It's foam. Foam from the oily oafs we're having. Oily oafs. Whew. Supervisor, I hope you're ready for some mouth-watering slammers.
I thought we were having oily oafs.
Oh no, I said aged oaks. That's what I call beer.
You call beer aged oaks?
Yes, it's a blue-collar dialect.
Uh-huh. In what department?
Upper launch deck crew?
Really? Well, I'm from Rig 15, and I never heard anyone use the phrase aged oaks.
Oh, not in 15. No, it's a Rig 17 expression.
I see. You know, these beers are quite similar to the ones they serve at the Abyss Bar.
Oh, no. Patented mining team slammers. Old Carl recipe.
For aged oaks?
Yes.
Yes, and you call them wood barrel aged, despite the fact these were obviously brewed in your room.
You know, the one thing I should... Excuse me for 1 second.
Yes.
Oh, well, that was wonderful. Good time was had by all. I'm pooped.
Yes, I should be. Good lord, what is happening in there?
Lithophage meteor shower?
Lithophage meteor shower? At this time of year, at this orbital distance, in this part of the rig, localized entirely within your quarters.
Yes.
May I see it?
No.
Siirvend, the beer is on fire.
No, Betsy, it's just a mild containment breach.
Well, Siirvend, you are an odd fellow, but I must say, you ate a good oak.
Oxygen levels at 20%. Should I initiate evacuation protocols?
We'll handle it, Betsy. Just quiet down.